Yeah, thank you very much, Eva, for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. And I've been doing this many times, especially on this file, but also on others, but I've never seen so many people at the parliamentary breakfast, which is probably already the first message in a way, because this specific initiative we're talking about here, the Platform to Business Regulation, is so broad, it's so all-encompassing, there's nobody that is not somehow affected. And that I saw, of course, in the last 2 years, in the preparatory work, but also ever since we started negotiating, the number of people that came to my office and realized they have a stake in this was quite impressive. I mean, I've been working on other industries before, and everything was sort of important, and online gambling and postal and textiles industry and aviation and what have you. But this here is so transversal, and I was sometimes surprised by who came to see me. And it was not just the starting point in a lot of hotels and sellers on marketplaces and so on. And then it extended further and further in the creative industries and the banking industry and telecom operators, large TV stations, what have you. So there's something that concerns everybody, which of course means that we need to get this right, because it is so important and it has effects on everybody out there that we collectively, Commission, Parliament, Council, we must get it right, or at least not get it wrong, because what is right is a very hard thing to say, and there are so many arguments out there, and many of them are valid, but still they may not always necessarily or can be fully reflected in our proposal. This cannot possibly a proposal that solves all problems in this world and makes everybody happy. That's absolutely impossible. So for me, two main considerations, because I don't have to speak about the substance itself, and also given the time constraints, and you know the substance. But first, it's really the whole ecosystem we have to keep in mind. And the ecosystem is large. It's the platforms, of course. But what is platforms? We cover so many sectors of the economy, so many different types of platforms. There's 7,500 at least in Europe that are affected by this proposal. So we must take care that the platform economy itself is not disrupted but improved. And there is different sectors, there's different sizes, so sometimes we're unhappy with large platforms allegedly doing this or the other, where we have to see, well, is this the right instrument? To what extent should we complement it with competition law enforcement? What about the small platforms out there? What about new platforms or entrants, if you want? Yeah? So whenever we regulate something existing, we must be very careful what that means for the market dynamics and for the possibility for new European startups, and that we don't now create hurdles that would make it impossible for new platforms in Europe to emerge. Second, of course, there's the consumers. And we all, as consumers, of course, have benefited largely from this increased possibilities and ease with which we can consume goods and services all over Europe, if not worldwide, which is so much easier than it was in the past. But still, of course, our proposal also tries to help consumers to get even a better deal. If there's more competition out there, if every potential seller has a chance really to reach us, that of course also translates very positively for the consumer. But once again, if we push it too hard in one or the other direction, we may also have detrimental effects on consumers, so watch out for this. Then of course we have the business users in all their dimensions, millions of businesses that one way or the other use those platforms. Again, it's two-sided. Yeah? All of them actually say they want and to need platforms to reach more customers than ever before. So that we should not stifle again by trying to help them, but at the same time we need to help them, because there are issues out there where we thought we need to rebalance the relations between platforms and their business users. And then there's society at large, if you want. Then we come into discussions like delisting, which is one of those wonderful topics, yeah, where we say this is the most detrimental impact that there can be on a business user if your account is closed. So of course we want to protect the business user from this happening in a way that can't be contested and is not transparent and so on. But now if we push it too far and say, well, for 15 days you can't take down anything, then people come and say, well, but what about my trademarks or counterfeit products being sold? And there are many other reasons why we would feel, and in other policies, like you mentioned the e-commerce directive, Eva, where we are trying to promote and to tell platforms, act responsibly, take down stuff that is illegal in many different ways. So we must also be careful that while trying to solve one problem, we don't create another one. So that's the ecosystem that we need to keep in mind. And the second part, and that's already my last statement probably, is because of the importance and the complexity of all of this, we must be as evidence-based as we possibly can. And that is pretty difficult. And I've been working on this for years with many experts and studies in this, that, and the other. And yet the digger you deep, the more complexity shows up, which means that first you need to fully understand the status quo before you change it. That's the first challenge. And the second is to understand what an impact we would have if we come with changes. Yeah, you're changing the status quo, you must be sure that afterwards we're being better off than before. So evidence, both to understand what we're doing right now, as well as the intended or unintended consequences of any actions that we're taking. And there are sometimes in the debate, there are very sectoral interests that are all very much justified, but if you then try to solve that particular problem, you solve it in inverted commas for many other sectors where this may not be so applicable. So evidence-based, that is why we, to the dissatisfaction of some, have proposed a rather cautious proposal. And I'm not saying it's the perfect balance that we struck, but we went as far as we thought we understand the consequences. And that is why we said, let's do something where we can be pretty sure that the benefits outweigh the costs now. It being understood that we keep working on the subject matters. So it's not sort of that's it, and now go home and be happy. But that's it, and let's build on that if there is something more that needs to be built. And that's why we set up the observatory, and we already started working with them in mid-December with the second meeting. And we're going to discuss how to measure the platform economy, understand it, market structures. What about data? What about discriminatory practices where they are? So all of these issues we already discuss and keep discussing. And so therefore our plea always, let's stick to this two-stage logic of things, do meaningful things immediately, and then get smarter together, all of us, so that in the long run we come to this European approach that is balanced but makes sense. Let's not forget we're the first ones doing this. Yeah? This is worldwide the first regulation of this kind. So in that sense we're sort of setting standards worldwide, and we are being watched, and I'm having discussions also with other constituencies. So let's try to get this right, and I'm very curious, of course, to hear what the other speakers and the audience then have to say. Thank you very much.